Today's headlines.
Welcome everyone to the News in Focus program. It is Sunday, May the 27th, 2012. It is currently 3:33 p.m. Central Time. Syria. The situation in Syria is literally falling apart. It is becoming more and more serious every single day. Things are becoming more unstable. Violence is increasing and people are dying. So today, I want to turn everyone's attention to that part of the world. I want to make sure you understand what is going on and the potential for something very bad to happen as a result of what is going on in Syria. Now, I have a news story in front of me right now. It is from the BBC, and it is dated 26 May 2012. Headline: Syria crisis. Child massacre confirmed by the United Nations. United Nations observers have counted at least 90 bodies, including 32 children, after a Syrian government attack on a town. Now, I want you to understand that. The Syrian government attacked a town within Syria. And this has been happening for a very long time, and people have been dying on a regular basis. But this story is getting so much attention because out of those 90 people, 32 of them were children. And if you look for an update right now, they have raised the death toll to somewhere near 116, and 36 of them were children. They are calling this a massacre, and it's bringing about condemnation from leaders around the world. Syria is in trouble. Is Syria going to descend into some type of civil war? Is sectarian violence going to reign? And what happens if it falls apart? That is the question I want you to consider. What happens if Syria falls apart? Now, as you think about the situation in Syria, I want you to think about this. Chemical weapons. There are chemical weapons located within Syria. If Syria falls apart, who gets control of those weapons? Where will they end up? And who could they be used against? Now, before we get to that, now that I've got your attention, now that you're thinking, okay, wait, the situation in Syria, this could involve all of us, especially if there's chemical weapons there. Exactly. But before we get to the question of chemical weapons, let's make sure we understand exactly how we got where we are today. And the first term you need to remember is this: Syrian uprising. Syrian uprising. Now, the Syrian uprising is an ongoing, violent internal conflict in Syria. It is part of the wider Arab Spring, which was a wave of upheaval throughout the Arab world. Public demonstrations across Syria began on 26 January 2011. Now, I want you to think about that. These demonstrations started on January 26 January to be exact, 2011. Today is May the 27th, 2012. These demonstrations have been going on and people have been dying. At first, they were just public demonstrations across Syria, and then they developed into a nationwide uprising. Protesters demanded and are demanding the resignation of President Bashar al-Assad. They want the overthrow of his government, and they want to bring to end nearly 5 decades of the Ba'ath Party rule. Now, since spring, now this is very important. So understand the term Syrian uprising. The next term I want you to remember, the Syrian army. Since spring 2011, The Syrian government has deployed the Syrian army to quell the uprising. Several cities have been besieged. So you have the Syrian government, and they're seeing all these demonstrations. They're seeing this uprising, and they're like, okay, we're going to stop this. You see, the government in Syria is not saying, well, we'll just step down. We'll make some changes. They're like, no, we're not going anywhere. We're in control. So they deployed the Syrian army to end this. What methods have the Syrian army been using? Well, let's just say violent ones. The ones that result in people dying. The ones that result in children dying. Now, nevertheless, in spite of this, the unrest continues. According to witnesses, soldiers who refused to open fire on civilians were executed by the Syrian army. So if you were in the Syrian army and you get the order, you're going to go to this Syrian town and you're going to open fire on these civilians. You're going to kill these people. And you said, no, I'm not doing that. The Syrian government had you executed. Now, the Syrian government denied reports of defection. Now, there were some reports coming out that people in the military were defecting, saying, I don't want anything to do with this. So the Syrian government has denied reports of defections, and they're blaming armed gangs for causing trouble. You see, the Syrian army is saying, look, we're not attacking, helpless civilians. These are armed gangs. They're causing the trouble. We're simply trying to defend the country. Now, since early autumn 2011, civilians and army defectors began forming fighting units, which began an insurgency campaign against the Syrian army. The insurgents unified under the banner Free Syrian Army. So when you hear the term Syrian army, that's the government's army. When you hear the term Free Syrian Army, that is civilians and army defectors coming together, forming these fighting units to go after the Syrian army. Therefore, you have the potential for almost a civil war. You have other civilian components, other civilians who are trying to fight, who they're not organized under the Free Syrian Army. They're just doing their own thing. Now, in the midst of all of this, you also have some sectarian undertones. Now, this is very important. The uprising has sectarian undertones, though neither faction in the conflict has described sectarianism as playing a major role. The opposition is dominated by Sunni Muslims. That's very important. So you have Sunnis and you also have a Shia component. Sunni and Shias, they don't always get along. So you have lots of concerns here, because once it becomes kind of a sectarian situation where you have Sunni and Shia Muslims, well, then you have other countries who may be more supportive of Sunnis or more supportive of Shia. And guess what? Who is dominated by Shia Islam? Iran. So you add all of this into the mix. You've got the Syrian army, the Syrian Free Army. You've got protest. You've got an uprising. You've got sectarian undertones between Sunni and Shia. You've got the mix for a total meltdown disaster. Now, according to various sources, including the United Nations, somewhere between 13,000 and 18,000 people have been killed, of which about half of them were civilians. Some place the number higher, some place the number lower, but somewhere between 13,000 to 18,000 people. The total official UN numbers of Syrian refugees has reached 42,000 at this time. So you got people fleeing the country, you got civilians dying, you got fighting, you got sectarian undertones, you've got a mess within Syria. And the UN can condemn the violence, the United States can condemn the violence, but it doesn't seem to be stopping anything. But back to my question. What if Syria falls apart? What if the government is absolutely, completely overthrown? Who takes over? And if they take over, Very important question. Now, on my Kindle, I subscribe to something called the Middle Eastern Perspective, I think is the name of it. Let me make sure I give you the exact name. Very valuable resource. It's called Middle East Perspectives. Middle East Perspectives. And they have a story with this title: Syria's Chemical Weapons and the Uprising. Syria's chemical weapons and the uprising. The next time you're listening to a news report from Syria, or you're watching a television report and you see all of that violence and you see all of that chaos and you see people dying, ask yourself this question: where are the chemical weapons? Who's protecting them? Who has control over them? Could they be used either by the current government or people coming in the midst of the chaos, obtaining those chemical weapons and then utilizing them for their own purposes? Let me read some of this story to you. Despite Kofi Annan's wishful thinking that his ceasefire plan is on track, the security situation in Syria continues to deteriorate. Many of the world's major powers, including the United States, has called for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to step down. So far, it doesn't look like he's willing to do that. As this process plays out, there is concern about what might happen to Syria's large stockpile of chemical weapons stored in several locations around the world, or around the country, I should say. So there are several locations of large stockpiles of chemical weapons within Syria. And these are stored in several locations around the country. The worst case scenario, of course, is that these weapons end up in the hands of a non-state actor such as Hezbollah or Al-Qaeda. Now, that would be concerning. If Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, or some other non-government actor, just some independent group or, terrorist cell or whatever the case they may be, if they were to get their hands on it. Now, technically, Syria is within its rights to have chemical weapons. The country is a signatory of the 1925 Geneva Protocol, which prohibits first use of chemical or biological weapons, but does not prohibit the manufacture or possession of them. So it's within the legal rights for Syria to have these weapons. They're just not to use them first. They can possess them. They can create them. They just can't use them first. So I guess they're supposed to be a deterrent for others not to use chemical weapons against them. But when you have these weapons, they're stored in locations around your country, and your country is falling apart. I don't know about you. I would be, if I was a reporter at these press conferences, I'd be like, does anyone know the current state of the chemical weapons in the country? Do we know if they're safe? Who's controlling them? Do we have a plan if the government falls apart? But as of right now, I haven't seen anyone talking about this. More significantly, Syria is not a signatory of the 1997 Chemical Weapons Convention, which goes further and does outlaw the production, stockpiling, and not just first use of chemical munitions. So they didn't sign that. They're a part of the 1925 Geneva Protocol. The only thing that prohibits is the first use of chemical or biological weapons, but they can create them and they can possess them and they can store them. They did not sign the 1997 Chemical Weapons Convention. That means Syria is under no international obligation to declare its chemical weapons, destroy them, or even allow international inspections to monitor them. So they don't even have to tell anyone how many they have, what they have, and they don't have to allow anyone to look at them. But remember, the country is falling apart, or at least it looks like it, I should say. By not signing the convention, Syria is in company with only Angola, North Korea, Egypt, Somalia, and South Sudan. Syria has not admitted that it possessed chemical weapons, but it is hardly a secret. It is believed to have the largest stockpile of undeclared chemical weapons in the world. Now this has got the signs. This could be turned into a really bad movie or a really bad novel. And when I say bad, bad is as far as the disaster you could show in that book or on that movie. I mean, think about it. The largest stockpiles of undeclared chemical weapons in the world, including, listen to this, Syria, possibly has in its possession the most lethal chemical warfare agent ever developed, the persistent nerve agent VX. Now, if they have VX and things are falling apart and anyone was to gain possession of that, death and destruction could follow. And let me emphasize could. I have no information right now saying disaster is around the corner. Everyone run. Everyone panic. But also think about this. If there are chemical weapons, and if this is an absolute fact, do you see how the United States or any other nation could utilize that as an excuse in order to send in troops, and that we could find ourselves right in the middle of another war and say, oh, chemical weapons? Now, of course, we went into Iraq and we didn't find any. So is this information incorrect? It could be. But that's always the chance you have to take. Now, the Director of National Intelligence, in an unclassified report to Congress in 2006, provided this assessment of Syria's chemical and biological weapons and the ballistic missiles that can be used to deliver them. It does not address Syrian Air Force fighter bombers that can also carry chemical weapons. And they go in, and this is an unclassified report, and it goes through all the things that they possibly have. And I'm not going to read the entire report to you because you would probably become very bored. Now, I will try to find this unclassified report online, and if I can, and you can email me and I'll send the link and you can read the unclassified report yourself. Let me see here if there's anything else here of great importance, because again, I don't want to read this whole thing to you. They end it this way. Syria's chemical weapons are and should be of concern. As the world determines the next step in confronting the bloodbath in Syria, it needs to take into consideration the status and disposition of Syria's chemical munitions. Although handling of the weapons requires specialized training, having them fall into the hands of Hezbollah via the Syrian regime or into the hands of Al-Qaeda via the Muslim Brotherhood, well, it is a frightening thought. Because whoever has those weapons would have power they did not possess 5 minutes before they possessed them, especially if they have VX. If they have VX, they could make all kinds of threats. They could turn the Middle East into an absolute war zone. They could bring death and destruction over cities, over areas. Who knows what could take place? So, who have you heard reporting on the chemical weapons within Syria? If you know of a report, television report or radio report, please let me know where I can obtain the audio and play it for everyone else. As of right now, I haven't heard anyone talking about the chemical weapons within Syria. So this could be used by governments to say, hey, we have to go in. This could play out in so many different ways. So number one, we need to try to confirm, does Syria have chemical weapons? As many resources or many sources as possible to confirm that. Number two, what chemical weapons do they have? And number three, what is the current status of those weapons? And if Bashar al-Assad, the president, and his government is overthrown, who takes over? In Egypt, it was the military. What if the Syrian army takes over? They would have access to all of those weapons. They would be in charge. What does this mean for the neighbors of Syria? What could this mean for Iran? Something to think about. It's a frightening thought, and I know I have more questions than I have answers, but you come across a report like this and you're like, what do we do? What do we do? I tell you this, pay attention to what's going on in Syria. Now, what I'm going to try to do is over the next few minutes, I'm going to try to gather a number of television reports from Al Jazeera, put all those together and play them for you in an upcoming program. But let's focus on Syria. And as you're watching and hearing about what is happening, in the back of your mind, have this question. Where are the chemical weapons? Where are they? You can contact me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, or by phone at 325-695-8202. That is newsif@yahoo.com, or by phone at 325-695-8202. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.
We've got all the news right here. Don't go away.